Good afternoon and welcome to the Ministry of Agriculture Facebook live stream. Must apologize for delayed start. Today's presentation will be the Forestry Division on presentation on forest fire prevention and watershed rehabilitation, presented by the Northwest Conservancy, presented by myself, Assistant Conservator of Forest, Mr. Lakshman Raghunanan, Agricultural Assistant 3, Mr. Balraj Raghu, and Forester 1, Mr. Narinder Santoki. The role of the Forestry Division in fire suppression and soil conservation is to sustainably manage a forest estate so as to optimize the use of resources to encourage and monitor the development of forest industries to conserve important and fragile ecosystems, to preserve biodiversity, maintain watersheds, and educate the public on the wise use of our resources. Forest officers and game wardens play a critical role in the management of the forest resources. This is further aided by the NGOs, schools, and you, the members of the private and public sector, as we aim to protect our resources for the present and future generations. Today's presentation will take the form of two parts, whereby we have two presentation videos, and then we'll follow by questions.
The Forestry Division is the key agency that is involved in the management of the state's forest and wildlife resources. In the management of our forest resources, emphasis is placed on the management and rehabilitation of our watersheds. A lot of effort is placed on the management of soil conservation techniques, mitigating flooding, and to ensure that our watershed resources are properly recharged so that the country can have a clean supply of potable water. This video is designed to demonstrate proper soil and water conservation techniques. It is designed to ensure that our resources are managed in a sustainable manner.
My name is Balraj Raghu, and I'm the Agricultural Assistant 3 at the Northwest Conservancy Forestry Division. This morning, my presentation will be managing on top to preserve the bottom. Forestry's role in preserving our water and the environment. In today's world, most governments are faced with the challenge of enhancing food security while balancing its environment. This problem has guided the government's goal to put environmental consideration at the heart of its developmental policy. The government of Trinidad and Tobago Vision 2030 pledges to conserve our land and sea, our wildlife, our marine spaces, and our green spaces and their diversity. As such, the Forestry Division is mandated to ensure that the forest biodiversity of Trinidad and Tobago are sustainably managed. As we are all aware, forest plays an important role in the quality of life that we humans enjoy. Forested catchments supply a high proportion of water for domestic, agricultural, industrial, and ecological needs in both upstream and downstream areas. They reduce soil loss, thereby keeping sediments out of the streams. They provide habitat for wildlife, provide recreational spaces, and of course, they act as carbon dioxide filters. But perhaps the most important contribution is in maintaining high water quality to the hydrological characteristics of its surrounding ecosystems. These benefits can be greatly diminished due to poor agronomic practices on the hillsides, which leads to erosion and a myriad of other problems on lower land areas. The Northern Range is a major area of concern for the Forestry Division because of its location and the fact that it is in full view of the entire population. It is an important watershed area that provides water for two of the country's major dams, as well as it supports various lives and livelihoods. Over the years, socioeconomic conditions have led to uncontrolled quarrying, squatting, and numerous other challenges that hinder the division's conservation efforts. One of the more critical tools that the division uses in managing our forests is agroforestry. This is simply a land use system that uses both forest species as well as agricultural crops on the same holding. 3 stations were commissioned to act as demonstration units to help assist farmers who farm on hillsides in their soil and water conservation attempts. These 3 stations were strategically located at the foothills of Maracas St. Joseph, Coral Royal Road, and the St. Michael Road, Tacarigua. These stations also serve as gateway barriers to prevent upslope squatting, provide planting material for mass production by other arms of the ministry, host field tours where simple, practical soil and water management conservation techniques are taught. When one considers that over 80% of the northern range is privately owned, one can appreciate how critical it is to properly manage and regenerate the forests that are under the control of the state. In addition to the agroforestry demonstration station, the division has undertaken in its 2022-2023 program of work to reforest 10 hectares of denuded forests, tend and supply 10 hectares of land that was reforested the previous year, conduct over 100 patrols along the northern range. We will strictly monitor private removal of logs, produce over 150,000 seedlings of various species at the St. Joseph Nursery to be used in its enrichment planting scheme. In order for the division to have a meaningful impact, it is imperative that communities in and around the range buy into the concept of conservation and its importance to water quantity and quality. Linkages have already been made with community groups at the St. Michael area, where the station trails are used for exercise and recreation purposes, and the community in return acts as an extra pair of eyes to prevent any unwanted activity. In the Cora area, talks are ongoing with the hunters in the community in an effort to preserve roadways. The Conservancy is also presently developing a plan to better use social media to showcase important initiatives, sites, and plans all aimed at highlighting the diversity and beauty of the Northern Range. We also continue to reinforce our cooperation with state agencies and NGOs and lend our expertise to their efforts as well. It is worthwhile to reiterate that the challenge faced by land, forest, and water managers is to find ways to maximize the benefits of our forests without detriment to our water resources and ecosystem function. This presentation aims to highlight the division's efforts in soil and water management techniques used in managing our forests on the Northern Range. We're here at the St. Michael Hillside Station, nestles at the foothills of the Northern Range. It is here that most of our teaching efforts on soil conservation takes place. Here we host students from the University of the West Indies, NGOs, primary schools, secondary schools. And it is here that we show basic soil and conservation and water conservation techniques used by hillside farmers. So when we are talking about soil and water conservation, basically we are talking about the concept of erosion. And when we are dealing with erosion, we are primarily concerned about 2 types: water erosion and erosion caused by the effects of fire. Erosion measures can be classified into 2 categories: mechanical as well as agronomic practices. Here we're going to outline some of the more applicable mechanical practices used by farmers on a hillside. So basically, there are 3 types of terraces used here at St. Michael. There are the bench type terrace, there are mini terraces, and there are eyebrow terrace. We are presently standing right now on what is called the bench type terrace. As you can see, where we are standing on is more than 2 meters in length and it is constructed in such a way that it slopes into the hill, thereby catching the water and allowing the water to flow along its contours, preventing the least amount of soil removal. This particular conservation technique would not be adopted readily by farmers, as it is very expensive to construct. So basically, this is the second type of terraces that we use here at St. Michael. As you can see, the actual bench is a lot narrower. Anything that is less than a meter or so, we characterize that as being a mini terrace. You notice again, in its construction, the bench portion is sloped towards the hillside, catching the flow of water coming down and dispersing it along the contours. Later on in the presentation, we will actually demonstrate how we go about constructing this particular method. Finally, we have what is called the eyebrow terrace here. It is the most adopted measure by farmers on the hillside, as it is cheap to construct and it is very effective. As you can see, the eyebrow shape into the hill is what gives it its characteristic name, eyebrow terrace. Water basically comes down the slope, pools at this point here, settles, infiltrates slowly, and then comes down further down the hill. Plants are planted at this lip here, and eventually on establishment, the root system helps stabilizes the soil. This particular tool that we have here is called the A-frame. It is probably the most important tool for any farmer who is farming on the hillside. Basically, it's just 3 pieces of wood. Our construction has it at 1 meter apart, joined by a piece in the middle, and any weight suspended from the middle with a center mark right at the middle of the frame. This particular demonstration that we're about to conduct is actually what a farmer has to go through in order to implement some sort of conservation method on his farm. It is very labor intensive, hence most farmers tend to use other sorts of conservation methods, basically intercropping, small check dams, or any low cost method. Generally, a farmer has a slope of land. He can start at the bottom of the slope at any particular point. Once he gets that point, he uses this tool now to try to establish a series of points along the hillside that are generally of the same elevation. That is what we consider a contour line. The A-frame is placed at the base of the stake and maneuvered up or down the slope in order to have this plumb bulb directly centered on the line. Once this line is set, that is the position of the other stake. This process is continued till the entire area is staked. The next step is to actually construct the terrace itself, the bench portion of the terrace. So the next step is the farmer comes, starts grubbing into the slope and creating the terrace, the bench portion of the terrace. If you notice, while he's grubbing, he's creating a channel as well. That channel is what we call the contour drain. So he cuts, creating the contour channel, and levels the bench portion of the terrace at the same time. So the next step after the construction of the lower terrace is to actually establish the one that is higher. Farmer comes, places the A-frame next to any particular stake, and maneuvers it in such a way so as this plumb bulb lines vertically with this portion of the A-frame. He then spies along, signaling his partner on top there to the base of the other stake, right there. And the next level of contour proceeds. Our agronomic conservation techniques here at St. Michael basically focuses with 2 particular techniques. One is intercropping, and the other is what we call grass barriers here. If you notice, this type of grass is what we call vetiver grass. It's a deep, fibrous rooted grass that when planted along the contours of a slope helps in stabilizing the soil. Water comes down, and if you notice it's planted in steps. The water checks at this grass barrier here, slows down, and then comes down at a gentler pace till it reaches the end of the slope. Plants can be planted in between the grass barriers, thereby increasing the yield on any farm. Another conservation method used to channel water from up the slope down towards the slope is the check dam. Now, a check dam could be either made of stone, wood, or any sort of available material that the farmer has on hand. This particular one here uses stone that was gathered from the St. Michael station and just packed in a semicircular fashion. What happens is you identify a natural waterway along the slope, and that particular waterway is then outfitted with check dams all along to decrease the velocity of flow coming down the slope. A slight gully is then constructed behind the check dams so that the water slows, comes down, pools at this point. It's allowed to infiltrate and slowly cascades over again. GLIRICIDIA is a popular plant used in soil conservation, as it not only serves the purpose of stopping water velocity down the slope, but it also enriches the soil by adding nitrogen. This is a perfect example of how check dams are used in soil conservation. As you can see here, this perfect example shows the water flow from on top coming down to the bottom. The water comes down, pools in the little recess that was created, settles, and gently flows over and continues on its way. Pools again, settles, goes over. This process reduces the amount of soil that is taken away with the water flow. No amount of soil conservation practices is going to really totally eradicate erosion. Here we have what is called a silt trap, which is located at the base of a natural waterway. During heavy downpours, a fair amount of sediments comes down, collects here before the water moves on its natural way. Not many farmers will be blessed with a natural spring on their holdings. If they are, they can probably construct something that looks like this. Basically, this is a catchment pond that we at St. Michael collects our natural spring water, channel it further down slope into an area where we do aquaculture, and then channel further down to our building where the water is used for other minor purposes. We have spoken extensively about erosion, mainly erosion caused by rain or water. But another contributing and a major contributing factor at that of erosion is forest fires. In that fire program, workers are dispatched throughout the northern range in an effort to suppress forest fires. Catchment areas such as these can assist workers in this suppression effort. It is only through the proper management and conservation techniques of our hills and slopes can we ensure that natural resources like these are maintained for generations to come.
Hi, good afternoon. So we have just looked at our soil and forestry division, soil and water conservation video. So we now move into our second video, We deal with our forest and fire suppression.
The Forestry Division, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, presents to you a virtual demonstration of forest fire suppression and the tools and techniques utilized by the division. Please be advised that all COVID-19 protocols were observed during this production. So join us as we introduce today's presenter, Forester 1, Mr. Narendra Santoki.
Hi, my name is Narendra Santoki, Forester 1 Fire Unit, and today we are going to do a virtual demonstration on fire suppression. During the fire season, we will be utilizing fire safety gears, our correct PPE, and also the simple hand tools. With the safety gears, we have the helmet with the straps, the breathing unit, our Lomex material shirt, pants, and the shoes. Some of you all may ask why it is we are not using fire gears in which fire services are using. Why this material is so small. The reason for this is that, one, the material is very lightweight, so it allows us to maneuver into the forest very easily to get away from fires in case our lives are in danger. Also, the Lomex material is very breathable, so it does not allow us to run the risk of heat stroke within the forest fire. In terms of the simple fire tools, we have the fire rake, fire beater, the McLeod, backpack pump, grip hook, Pulaski, and the drip torch. The fire rake and the McLeod are used to clear the fire lines around the wildfire. The fire beater is basically to smother any small fires around the area or to suppress whatever fire there is. Even though there are fires that get away, we use this to basically smother the fire so it wouldn't raise into a wildfire. The backpack pump, when we're doing our mop-up sessions, whatever stumps or logs that are still burning, we use this to out the area to make sure there's nothing left that is burning. Grip hook and Pulaski, these are used as basic tools to move all debris off the fire line into the fire. The drip torch is for when we are doing our back burning. When using forest hand tools to out fires, they should never be used in areas where you have high winds, crown fires, or fires in the tops of trees, or very large fires which are able to roll over, swirl, or cross your fire lines. So during fire season, when we have our fire patrols, if a fire is spotted or detected, we go to scene. But before we go to scene, we call our forester twos, and they would take the information as to where we are going, and only when we reach on site, then we can call back and say the size of the fire. Within that time, the forester twos will call any other foresters or crews in the area to give back up to us. After the fire has been suppressed, or even during routine patrols where roadside fires are detected, after all that, we usually fill out a fire report form. When approaching a fire, the first step is to size up the fire. When you look at the area, you first on the spot, you have to look at where the head of the fire is, which direction the fire is going, and in terms of if there are any areas of much consideration, if there are houses, people, roadway, whatever what we deem in terms of importance, and even so if there are people who are not working forestry who are trying to out the fire, we have to look at all these factors into consideration. After the fire is sized up and we determine that simple hand tools can suppress this fire, we then go proceed to attacking the head of the fire. If this is the head of your fire, then this is your area of attack here. Then this is where you start the attack. Once you suppress the head of the fire and you have this under control, then the rest of the fire is easy to suppress. After you attack the head of the fire, the first thing you want to do is form a fire trace or fire line around your fire. This is called an indirect attack by attacking the head of the fire. Now, basically what you're going to do, you're going to spread your crew in two, and you're going to attack the fire from either directions. So after you utilize your McLeod and your fan rake to set up this fire line or your control line, now you're going to set your backfire. Using the drip torch, you're going to start your backfire from the head of the fire all the way to the sides. So this backfire is going to burn the fire trace on the inside. You need to set your backfire on the inside. It may sound a little funny telling someone not to set a backfire on the outside, but in the heat of things with the adrenaline rushing, people may forget. So it is very important that you set your backfire on the inside of the fire line. By so doing, this backfire will burn in this direction and the wildfire burning in this direction. Hence, this entire area will burn out, controlling everything within your fire control line. Next part of thing is to patrol. With your crew going around the fire lines in either direction, while this is burning, the crew will be walking and patrolling to look for any falling debris, falling logs, or any trees that fall apart over the control line to set a new wildfire. Lastly, we call it mop-up activity. The mop-up activity is basically after this area has been burnt out and you already patrol and realize there is no more fire beyond your fire control line, a mop-up activity takes place, and basically all logs, stumps, or anything that is smoking or still looks that is hot and it could spread another fire, the backpack pumps are used now to wet those areas to suppress whatever fire left so that there will be no more fires. Another hurdle forestry faces is fighting fires on a very steep slope. In fighting a fire on a steep slope, you want to make this fire line twice the width of the fire down the slope so that workers can exit in either direction safely, either to the left or the right. Within fighting a fire on a steep slope, you never want to have workers go up the slope or down the slope. It is either a left or right direction out of the way of the fire. The most important thing is to get rid or to suppress the head of the fire immediately. Once the head of the fire is suppressed immediately, then and only then can you send workers down to build your fire lines on either side of the fire down the slope. When going down the slope, you would want to build a fire line straight. You never want to build a fire line going inward or outward. If you create a fire line inward or outward, you increase the chances of falling debris and creating a wildfire outside of your fire control line. All right, in terms of fire, there are three things in which causes a fire to burn: high winds, heat, and fuel. In Forestry Division, the major thing to remove is fuel, and we will suppress the fire. One of the major hurdles we face on a steep slope is excessive winds. On a hillside, wind is a major factor, and it adds to the fire very rapidly. And in so doing, when the wind hits the fire going up the hill, you tend to have more than one fire head. But sometimes workers will be handling one fire head, and with the excessive winds, another fire head will be created and come on the other side, and sometimes engulf workers, which is very dangerous. Please be safe out there, and remember to observe all COVID-19 protocols.
Right, so we just looked at the two videos in terms of our soil conservation and our fire suppression. We now have Mr. Santoki, who will share some of the highlights.
Hi, good day, everyone. You all just saw the video on fire suppression. Basically, that is forestry role in handling fires. Some of you all may be asking, well, what exactly is a fire? Well, a fire is a state, process, or instant of combustion in which fuel or other materials is ignited and combined with oxygen, giving off light, heat, and flame. Now, in layman's term, what exactly that means is you have debris in the forest, which is all fallen branches, logs, leaves, and when you have the fire, when fire starts with that, you have oxygen in the air, high winds to create your heat. Now, our fire season starts from the 1st of December and it goes on to the 30th of June of the preceding year. Northwest Conservancy, we perform daily patrols during this fire season time to our hotspots. Now, our hotspots are basically the areas where we have forest fires that occur very frequently. As shown in the video, We have our Lomex material that we use to protect our workers. These Lomex material helps us a lot with maneuverability in the forest, and also it prevents us from heat stroke. In the video, you all saw the fire rakes, the fire beaters, and the McLeods. These basically is to help us with our fire control line. The fire beaters, basically, it doesn't really, we don't really beat the fire with the fire beaters in as you can see from the name. We basically smother the fire and try to suppress it. We try to basically take away the oxygen from fueling the fire even further. Fire prevention, suppression. One of the most important things when you go out there to the field, we have to call into the office. Our managers in the office, we have basic office crew that will take our calls, and this crew will make sure and take note as to where we are. In the event anything happens without wishing, we always have some backup coming to help us. Now, in our fire suppression, it must be noted that we attack at the head of the fire. We do not attack the head of the fire. This must be understood. When you're attacking the head of the fire, you are basically doing a direct attack. Forestry Division, we use simple hand tools and we do not do a direct attack. We attack at the head of the fire, and we create our fire lines around the fire. We do with our normal forest tools, fire rake, fire beater, or fire rake and the McLeod. We create our fire lines, and we start our backburn with our trip torch. After this backburn, we have our normal patrols. Once the fire, we deem it suppressed enough, and we also do our mop-up activities. During our last fire season, in our fire data, it can be seen that the total number of fires in the 2022 year was 95, and we had a total of 296.7 hectares burned. Now, mainly in forestry division, in forest fires in Trinidad, we have a lot of secondary forest and grassland burning. A lot of people tend to think that simple cigarettes being thrown out of car windows, or I even heard someone saying that beer bottles being magnified by the sun would cause fires. Those are, maybe 1% of the times they may cause fires, but 99.999% of the times forest fires occurs from agricultural slash and burn. Farmers burning lands to start agriculture. We are aiding people to cease and desist from this method. There are other methods which could be used. It may be a little costly, simple like cutting grass and using weedicide. But we try to get away from this method. And even so, members of the population wants to burn fire, there is always the fire services that you can go to. A simple $10 for a permit. They would come visit the site and advise you how to set your fire in a safe manner so that it wouldn't spread into a wildfire. If for any further information, we would ask that you contact the Forestry Division. During the fire season, you can contact the forestry hotline at 225-3816 between the hours of 9 to 5. Thank you. I'll pass you on to Mr. Lutman.
Hi, good afternoon again. So we have heard from Mr. Santuki and a recap on the forest fire suppression methods. So we now have Mr. Balrajagua, a tree, to give a recap as well as the operations of the soil and water conservation within the Forestry Division.
Hey, good afternoon all. Basically, soil and water conservation is a very, very, very important technique. If we really go to think about it, 70% of our body is really made up of water, and we know we can't really survive more than 5 minutes without air. These are critical input for our basic survival. And on the northern range, the management of these two faculties is very important. The video that we presented goes a small way in forestry's effort to maintaining a good ecosystem here in Trinidad and Tobago. All right. So when we're thinking about soil and water conservation, we have to be cognizant of the fact and try to control things like quarrying, setting wildlife fires, indiscriminate hunting, and most importantly, unplanned housing development. This, in my estimation, is probably one of the biggest deterrent for us to achieve our objectives on the Northern Range in terms of soil and water management techniques. Right? At the Northwest Conservancy, our 3 agricultural hillside stations are open to the public to visit at any point in time, where we will actually do demonstrations for farmers, general public, schools, NGOs, anyone. Feel free to contact myself at 686-8729, that's 686-8729, or Mr. Lakshman Raghunanan at 460-001 to set up an appointment. Please give us a couple of days notice so that we can put things in place and we can facilitate any group in actually doing a demonstration on what's proper on our hillsides. Once again, we invite any questions on either of our presentation to any member of our panel. We await questions.
Thank you again, Mr. Raghu. As we go forward, this question can also be forwarded to our forestry email at forestry.gov.tt. Right? Again, we want to urge members of the public in trying their best in terms of preventing forest fires, reducing erosion, reducing littering, to help conserve our resources for our present and future generation. At this time, I want to take the opportunity to thank the Ministry of Agriculture and Land and Fisheries Department for hosting this event, and to members of the Forestry Division staff for helping and presenting today. We thank you all for your time.